So thank you for joining us here at the Maison Française today. So it's my very great pleasure to welcome you all here at the MFO. We are very delighted to be able to offer this event today, thanks to the collaboration with the Digital Scholarship at Oxford. And I very much want to thank all the DiSc at Oxford team, and particularly Robert Hotson, the director, for supporting the idea of having, first a series of seminars on analysis of corpora in digital humanities, and for having this special session, introductory session here in this hybrid format with our colleagues remotely participating and you all here at the Maison Française. So just a few words about the idea and this event. It was really starting from a discussion we had here at the Maison with colleagues about how we could sort of use new innovative tools in computer sciences, for instance, and sort of develop the analysis of different types of corpora. And our idea was to try to bring together people who have expertise in the domain as researchers in the humanities, but also people engaged in digital humanities, in data management, in data analysis from a long time, and trying to sort of bridge this interdisciplinary dialogue and connect them around the idea of developing the analysis of corpora. So hence the title of the series of webinars, New Tools and Old Questions in the Analysis of Textual Corpora. Today it's the first seminar, so it's more dedicated to institutional aspects, and the three seminars we'll have, the second will be tomorrow, will be more focused on different types of corpora, Greek corpora tomorrow, corpora around the 18th century and the Enlightenment issues. And finally, the last seminar will be on contemporary corpora taken from social networks. So it will give us, I think, at the end of the seminar, a good vision on, I shouldn't use the term vision once I heard the seminar. Somebody who told me that when you have a vision, you must see a doctor. But we will have perhaps a better understanding of the challenges we have in digital humanities. And yes, the last word to thank you very much for your collaboration. Thank you for the speakers who accepted to be with us today. Thank you to Goran, Gaber, and to the colleagues Olivier, Moens, and remotely Grégoire, Tristan, who helped in, and Andrew. I should mention Andrew Cusworth, who hopefully is not with us because, they just had a baby yesterday, I think. And so he apologized, but he's very much with us today. So thank you very much. Howard, yes. And then I will say a few words regarding housekeeping for the session. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Pascal, and thank you above all for hosting this event and for doing such work in. Should I be wearing this?
You just have to
just keep it close. Yeah. Yeah. My first thought in pulling together just a few notes was that for me, information technology has always been identified with communication technology. I think that's one of the brilliant things about the era that we're working through. In other words, it's not just about working with data, it's also about working with one another, working with colleagues, both in close proximity and at a distance. And without stressing the political situation too overtly, I think it's fair to say that those of us on this island have never felt more in need of technologies of communication with our partners and our neighbors on the continent. And I think this is particularly true so this is a very meaningful and important exchange from that point of view. But I also think it addresses a moment in the evolution of digital scholarship, the digital humanities, the application of IT to humanistic scholarship, as well as this problem of sustainability and this problem of collaboration together on the topic of our discussion today, the development of strategies of sustainability and shared digital infrastructure comes to the fore. Now, Oxford has had a long track record in the application of humanistic computing to the domain on which the Maison Française sits, and I'm sure this is all very well known to everyone. The electronic enlightenment has been around for decades, evolving into digital Voltaire. One of the really crucial nexus of interest in the application of technology to humanistic scholarship, but particularly to the Enlightenment, especially the French Enlightenment. And the Maison Française has done very important work in helping to foster this gradually expanding field for quite some time. The event which immediately comes to my mind is Digitizing Enlightenment 3 in July 2018. Co-sponsored by the Cultures of Knowledge Project and the Cost Action, as well as the Voltaire Foundation and the Maison Française. And then more recently, the Conference on Anglo-Dutch-French Networks, beautifully timed for December 2019. We didn't know at the time that that was one of the last moments we could all come together again before the pandemic interrupted things. But now this series is taking things to the next level. It's a series extended over 4 days. It's an expanding range of topics, reaching back to the ancient world, to treat Greek and Latin corpora, including the Renaissance alongside the Enlightenment, moving forward into the study of contemporary social media as well. But I think even more importantly, it's digging deeper into these kind of foundational aspects of the digital humanities world at the moment. And again, I think the timing is extremely fortuitous. Oxford has been moving forward in beginning to consolidate its digital assets in the period, building on achievements of other institutions, the Oxford E-Research Center, the Alan Turing Institute, but now coordinating things with digital scholarship at Oxford. The main purpose of which is to bring our assets and initiatives in digital scholarship into a more sort of mutually supportive and coherent configuration. Of course, France is doing the same thing on a grand scale with major initiatives at the CNRS and the Bibliothèque Nationale, which we're very, very keen to learn more about. And this opens the prospect for communication at the level in which international collaboration, it seems to me, is most urgently needed. Not merely building on earlier patterns of sort of incidental communication and ephemeral collaboration, but tackling the really difficult problems of creating and sustaining long-term infrastructures in a research environment that favors short-term funding, and seeking sustainability partly in new sources, which balance public funding on which we've all relied primarily to date, with the exploration of the possibility of complementary funding coming in from other sources. You know, these are really big challenges, and they're problems which are really too large for any one institution to tackle, and arguably for any one country. In any case, you know, the great thing about communication technology is it reaches out across boundaries, whether national or disciplinary. So hence the great value as well as the timeliness of this initiative. It offers the opportunity to join forces with what promises to be major established and emerging powerhouses in digital scholarship across the channel. So let me just conclude by thanking Kat and Andrew on the one side from the DiSc side of things, but above all, the much longer list of colleagues both in the Maison Française, French colleagues in Oxford, French colleagues abroad, who have done the majority of the really heavy lifting in putting this event together. It really is an important event for those of us at the core of the DiSC enterprise here. And we're very, very interested to learn more about what you're doing in France. So thank you so much for coming, and I look forward to the rest of the week's, rest of the fortnight's activities as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Howard. Yes, so thank you very much, Kate, for your help on this. So just a few elements for the organization of the afternoon. So we hear first Nicolas Sauret from Huma-Num CNRS. Then it will be Emmanuel Bermès remotely and Marie Carlin from Bibliothèque Nationale de France. Then we'll have a short break, a 5-minute break, because I'm sorry to say that we have to shift from one Zoom meeting to another Zoom meeting, but the colleagues online are given the right link to, after the break, shift to the right link. And in the second part of the webinar, we'll have Barbara McGillivray from King's College London, and Dave Giroux from the Engineering Science Department and the Alan Turing Institute. And so the way we'll have it is each of you will have a 20-minute slot for your presentation, followed by a 5-minute time of Q&A. Then we'll have this break, 5-minute break to change systems, and then we'll have the two speakers. And then we'll have time for a general discussion at the end. And if we need more time, we have a wine and cheese prepared for everybody after the session. So it will be also a nice opportunity to follow up on discussion. So I won't say much more. So thank you for all the speakers. And yeah, Nicolas, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nicolas Sauret, and I work presently at the lab of the research infrastructure Huma-Num. So I will present very quickly what is a HN lab, and later on 2 recent actions that we have conducted in the past year addressing the question of AI. So the first one is a 7-month project to build an AI infrastructure in order to process the archives of 3 scholarly journals. And the second one is a proof of concept called Callisto, which aims to become a collaborative platform and a publishing space for AI methodologies. So why a lab within a research infrastructure? It started with the analysis that the landscape of the digital humanities has radically changed in the last decades, and the tools and digital methodology were largely democratized in the communities. And finally, the teams and the projects in humanities became more autonomous in their practices, and the innovation has moved from infrastructures to the communities. And so the issue for Huma-Num as an infrastructure became how to keep guiding this innovation and how to integrate it into the infrastructure services. In order to address this issue, the lab missions are mainly to produce knowledge with an epistemological approach on the digital practices in the human science communities, and to doing this mainly by observing and analyzing those practices. And finally, by experimenting and co-designing digital services and methodologies. So we have 4 research areas. First of all, the scholarly writing. How is scholarly writing transformed? How to integrate data sets and their processing and tools into writing. Secondly, the scholarly images. What are the scientific use of images? What best practice should be put in place in terms of circulation and publication, and also in terms of image processing. Then we have the research area data modeling, and with the question how to respond to the tension between data standardization and autonomy in the research process, and how to improve digital literacy on data modeling. And finally, the last one, data analysis, which address more specifically AI methodologies with those questions, how to facilitate access to processing methods, and especially machine and deep learning method for the human and social science communities, and how to mutualize the production of models for use and for use in and across those disciplines. So our activity very quickly is the types of action we may conduct are to welcome researchers in residence, to set up and animate working groups on different topics, to lead research programs, and finally to design and produce prototype and proof of concept. So this first project is called Revue.20, and at the Ashen Lab we were asked to build and to experiment in AI infrastructure on above scholarly journals corpora. So the context of the research program is the context for this experimentation was Revue.20, a research program which is led by the Canada Research Chair in Digital Writing, and it was funded by the SSHRC in Canada. So several experimentations have been conducted, and one of them was undertaken by the Asian Lab as a partner of the program. And it meant to explore the full text corpora of 3 journals in humanities in order to grasp the theoretical scope of each journal. So we started from the very issues of the publishers. What is the scientific contribution of a journal? What are the concepts that have shaped the history of a journal, and how to situate a scholarly journal in its fields of research? So based on these complex questions, we set up an experimentation in order to test and to compare different automatic text analysis methods, in particular machine and deep learning methods. And one of the objectives was also to confront the AI methods with the existing semantic analysis and the enrichment method of the Huma-Num search engine, which is called Isidore, and thus to evaluate the potential of artificial intelligence for the Huma-Num services. So the initial scientific problematic has been transposed into a sub-problem that can be addressed by algorithm, which is what are the most relevant and characteristic concepts of a given corpora. And indeed, identifying this relevant concepts is a prerequisite for developing a series of comparative, quantitative, and qualitative analysis at different scales, likely to provide clues and elements to answer the initial problems. And this search for the most relevant concept was systematically carried out on 3 editorial levels, so the article, the issue, and the journal itself. And this granularity opened up relevant scales of analysis, for example, to understand the evolution of the conceptual field of a journal over time. So working closely with a data scientist, we achieved the project after 7 months of work involving regularly the publishers themselves for annotating, assessing, and fine-tuning the algorithm. So I will go quickly through those 4 results. Work better with okay. However, it's not working anymore. So we built a complete and detailed processing chain for the 3 corpora that can be roughly cut out in 6 stages: data preparation, terminology analysis, syntactic analysis, vectorization of corpora by editorial level, and identification of relevant concepts and semantic clustering. So the different modules of the chain are distributed into Python notebooks, articulating the code and its documentation. And several deep learning algorithms has been tested in order to improve the results. And that was one of the interests of working with the data scientists. Finally, the language model BERT ended up giving the best results. Working, great. So the whole process was implemented into on a server, and more specifically on a single basic virtual machine. I won't go into details right now, just to mention that the fact that building such a reproducible and complete chain of process require quite some skills that goes beyond simple script production. And we had the chance to work with an extremely skilled data scientist who has been able to manage the whole design of the infrastructure. So the processing chain was systematically evaluated by different metrics, assessing 3 dimensions: the data quality, the system efficiency, and the relevance of the AI method in order to identify the relevant concepts. Finally, the project has produced a large quantity of intermediate data resulting from the corpora transformation, its terminological analysis, and its vectorizations. And part of this data is ingested by an Elasticsearch platform and its visualization plugin Kibana, which allows to elaborate complex queries on the pre-processed data. So here I present 2 visualizations. One on the left is a dashboard, allowing to apprehend and to compare the corpora of 2 journals in here. So it proposes a sort of macro view on the corpora. And the one on the right is one topic cluster of the journal Sens Public with several data and visualization associated with this cluster. So Kibana allows to design and configure such visualization really on the fly. And here, with those visualizations, starts a new phase of qualitative analysis by the publishers themselves based on this visualization and intermediate data. We'll go very quickly, maybe on perspective, just to say that this work has started some thought and reflection about how to industrialize the same platform for other corpora, but also how to implement what we call situated vocabularies or situated ontologies, which could be designed and developed on the fly through those kind of processing chain. So let me present now Callisto, that is basically a proof of concept for, first of all, a Jupyter Lab and Jupyter Hub platform integrated in the Huma-Num ecosystem and dedicated to the human and social sciences. And it's also a publishing space to share and publish data processing methodologies on ready-to-use generic notebooks. So for those who don't know what is Jupyter Lab and Jupyter Hub are implementing a collaborative ecosystem to edit and to execute Jupyter notebooks that are particularly relevant for scientific data processing, since it can gather in the same writing space the code for manipulating the data, the documentation of the algorithm, and of course, the interpretation of their results. So it's a perfect interdisciplinary space where developers, data scientists, researchers can co-produce knowledge and particularly relevant in the context of the human and social science. And the particularity of Callisto is to be dedicated to human and social science by being interconnected with the Huma-Num ecosystem. So, so the different tools of this ecosystem I'm presenting here really quickly are GitLab, Nakala, which is a data repository, Isidore, which is a search engine of Huma-Num, and Stilo, which is a writing and editing tools for the humanities. But Callisto has also the ambition to become a publishing space for researchers and data scientists to share and publish generic notebook that the rest of the communities can appropriate for their own research. Other similar initiatives exist as RZine, or maybe you know programming historians. And those initiatives start to shape new practices in terms of scholarly communication, focusing on the research process rather than the research results. And there is here a very interesting shift of value here from the result to the protocols, and probably what digital humanities is progressively starting to offer to the scientific community. I realize I was very quick, I'm sorry, but I'm finished.
Thank you, Nicolas. So we have time for
plenty of questions
and for you to perhaps develop something you want to. Who wants to start? This is the microphone, normally. Thank you.
Yeah, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about where Huma-Num sits within the sort of infrastructure of the CNRS. What's its sort of institutional context, and how its mission is defined by the sort of umbrella organization within which it sits.
I forgot to mention that Nicolas Larousse will be presenting Huma-Num more largely tomorrow.
Right.
But basically, Huma-Num is a research infrastructure dedicated to human and social sciences.
Mm-hmm.
So the CNRS, of course, covers every disciplines, and Huma-Num is really specifically is addressing specifically humanities disciplines. Mm-hmm. But maybe Nicolas, if you want to complete.
Yes.
Yes.
And to do a link with what you said just before, we are financed by the ministry directly, and we are financed for long term, relatively long term, because we are on the roadmap, on infrastructure roadmap, French infrastructure roadmap, which is aligned with the European infrastructure roadmap. So that means that we have a view about fundings, which is important, as you mentioned before, and we have a national duty to serve the SSH in general. So we provide mostly services, digital services, but we also provide something which is more original in a way, because we do some support, and we support a group of people. We call that consortium. And we also support people in regional infrastructure to articulate what we are doing at the national level and regional level. But I will develop that tomorrow morning.
Yes, Eric.
Yeah, thanks a lot for your talk. Regarding the first example you gave about Revue 2.0, you said the ambition was to compare it with traditional methods, but you did not give us many elements of comparison. So in which ways did the AI system perform better, or like what kind of new things it introduced into the field? If you could talk a bit about that, maybe.
Very briefly, because I was not the data scientist working on it, but what I saw was quite interesting is that he first performed a simple algorithm based on what do you call it in English? I'm not sure. Le nombre d'occurrences, so the number of occurrency. Maybe someone can help me on here. Sorry? No, the frequency, basically, of terms. And the frequency of terms gives something around 80% of relevance. And look, using a BERT and other, but mainly BERT, which because really quickly BERT arrived as the best, got the best result. I think we went up to 80, 90, 91, 92% results. So it was interesting to see that basically a few hours work on and using a simple algorithm was already giving quite interesting results comparing to. So what his work on during 7 months was really focusing on how to build a complete chain that was reproducible. So not today you can just get the whole chain on the GitLab of Huma-Num. It's all Dockerized, and you can really reinstall it on a virtual machine very simply. The other thing was to set up all those metrics in order to assess the quality of the work. Yeah, he has been exploring further on the structure of the discourse to see, and for him, analyzing the structure of the discourse within the articles was one one trail to have even better results.
Yes, thank you for your talk. Again, concerning those 3 journals, have you been digitizing them, or are you planning to develop a tool that could be used with the 2 main repositories for journals in human sciences in France that are revue.org and per because it seems to me that the material already exists in those repositories, which are huge ones. So are you planning also to develop collaboration with those places where you find more and more journals for human sciences, or are you starting from scratch when you have to implement such a tool?
So we were working within the context of the Revue.20 project, where Open Edition, per se was not a partner, but Open Edition was a partner, Huma-Num was a partner, and Érudit was a partner. And Érudit is the equivalent of Open Edition in Quebec, in Canada. And so for those three journals, we used the digitized corpora from Érudit. So already it was all in XML in the schema of Érudit, the Érudit schema. And so we were able to use quite good quality data to start with. But the idea, of course, of the project is to push further the project and specifically to work with Open Edition to be able to ingest Open Edition corpora, of course.
So I think it's more sort of, it's a bit of a follow-up on the last question. I was wondering, well, it's sort of a double question. On how much do you work with others on these ecosystems? I guess when we talk about ecosystems with different components that work very well together, one of the things that come out of that is also it may not necessarily work very well with other systems outside of it. So how much do you try to sort of connect with other people who are doing similar things in other national contexts and so on, so that the communication is not just sort of, the danger of such ecosystem is that it becomes sort of an internal French affair.
Of course.
So that was my first question. My second question is about, do you have any sense at this point of the take-up of these services that you offer? Like someone like myself, I use Nakada all the time, but just as a sort of, as a partly just to deposit stuff and just keep it there, and then to connect it to a website. I have a little website with video. So I use it a little bit, but it's not something I use an awful lot. And I've been at the CNIS for 10 years. So how much, do you have any data on the take-up of these services that you offer, where they're actually used, and what percentage of the CNIS employees, for example, who are actually using it?
I will let this second question to Nicolas, but for the first question, is question you ask is about interoperability, yes. Of course, between services and of course between infrastructures and ecosystem. Huma-Num has worked really in that sense, and it's all based on standard formats, standard protocols. So if if we develop specific link in between the different tools and services inside the ecosystem of Huma-Num, all of them are available through different protocols, which could be API, which could be OAIPMH in English, right? OAIPMH.
Yes.
And so I would say when those protocols exist and are built on the services, it's up to the users and up to the other infrastructure or the other institution to build their own connectors to those through those protocols. I'm sorry.
No, sorry, it's international protocols.
Yeah. Concerning the use of, si tu as entendu la question.
Nakala.
Nakala and others.
So we have users, yes, and you are a user, apparently. And so Nakala was at the beginning was a very simple tool. It was only repository. Now the new version of Nakala is more than that. Maybe you notice that interface is much better. We have a publication tool which name is Nakala Press. And we have also a lot of connectors, and a lot of people are using these connectors to integrate data stored in Nakala in their own ecosystem, may I say. So we have, for instance, we have a big project with the walls of Karnak in Egypt. And the guy is putting all his data in Nakala and just showing them with other metadata gathered from other resources, other database in another website. And we have also examples of people using, for instance, the videos. They have a catalog. So Nakala is there for that, but they also keep some different videos to put them together in a web documentary. And so the idea of Nakala is to separate the place when you store data from the place when you show the data. And we have about figures. We have 350,000 data in Nakala today and around 2,000 users. For Visitor, for instance, we have 2,000 users, maybe more, a little bit more, I don't know, the last figures. And for Nakala, from the authentication system, the centralized authentication system, we have around 5,000 users. This is the figures. Other questions? Goran, you have a question.
I'm also not sure if there are any questions online, but I'll make it quick. I also would have a question about the possibility of reusing your model of analyzing the relevance and characteristics of concepts in journals. And there is, I believe, a very large part that is almost ready to use. There is one component that leans on expertise of humans, actually, in identifying which concepts are relevant. And I was thinking, have you thought or have you have any ideas of how to enable other users to integrate this component of research into their own research, or how do you imagine that this could be done in the future and with other
so
research
we
projects?
use this tool called Docano to invite publishers to annotate the corpora. So this phase is the training of the algorithm. So you need humans to annotate the corpora, and based on those annotation, the algorithm will my English will just have better results. So what we've set up for, I'm not sure about the question, is how we did this, or
how do you imagine that other people could use this model when they do not have necessarily access to already annotated texts in the future, or experts that would be ready to pronounce themselves on the relevance of concepts in the journals, if I understood what you said correctly.
Not sure to understand the question.
The digital part, you can take it, you can use it.
Yes.
What about the human part? How, if you have any ideas of how to enable people to?
So it was not an issue for us. So we were working within a project, and those three journals publisher were part of the project. So we just approached them, and they was easy to mobilize them. Now for annotating, I know there are several projects for collaborative annotation tools. Maybe again, if someone can help me on this, but for example, for Transcribus is a platform for corpora annotation. Now I believe it takes the full work on mobilizing a community, animating this community. Hopefully for us, that was not the issue. But you can go through those different projects that have conducted such community animation for annotating. But I won't be able here to give you an answer on that.
Well, thank you very much. I think, thank you for the question. We can, give the floor to Marie now. Do we have a last question?
You have to retrain the model each time you expose it to a new corpus?
No, it was one of the achievements that we ended up with a trained model that we can reuse. Well, that's what, because we had only 3 corpora, we haven't been able to test it on another one, but we believe that it was trained on the French what do you say, later studies, basically, journals. So it would be interesting to compare the results with other kind of humanities corpora, but we believe that we have an interesting model pre-trained. Ça revient.
Ça revient. Merci. Ah, mince. Ah non, je suis une participante. Comment je fais pour partager mon écran?
Il faut demander à l'host.
Alors, pourriez-vous, s'il vous plaît, me donner le partage d'écran? Si quelqu'un m'entend. Alors. Ah, mon nom, c'est Pascal Marty.
Donc, si c'est sur l'ordinateur de Pascal, il est déjà co-host.
Alors,
ah non, c'est d'accord, ok, je ne sais pas pourquoi, il a dû sortir, ok, c'est bon.
C'est bon.
Parfait. Oui, le diaporama, non, grammaire, non. Affichage, ah, pardon, attendez, hop. Donc, bien évidemment, je commence au début. Voilà. I will be on 2 computers because we're speaking about digital humanities. Good afternoon. I'm Marie Carlin. I'm a librarian. I'm not a data analyst, or I'm a librarian. And I'm working at the BNF, and I'm the coordinator of the new Bnf Data Lab. And I will be presenting today the policy of the BNF regarding the digital humanities. And I'm with my colleague, Emmanuelle Bermès, which is abroad, but you can see her. She's just there, the only one that took a picture. And our purpose is to present. It's going to be much less technical, maybe here, but really to present what has been made at the BNF and what still remains to do to welcome the researcher who wants to work on digital humanities. I don't know what's going on with this slide. It's very weird.
You need to mute.
It's shut down, so I don't know. It's weird. I don't know. Let's see. Yeah. So can't remember what I was talking about. Yeah, we would like to introduce how we build the services in the National Library, so that the DH, so the digital humanities, could be a real opportunity for the library. And we really wanted to build a service that can be a co-construction with researchers, but also with the engineer, and to have this kind of real communication between engineer, librarians, and researchers, of course. I'm sure that's exactly the same in here at the Bodleian, but at the BNF, we have a very long-term relationship with researchers for a very long time. And thanks to the legal deposit, the BNF is one of the oldest libraries that has the legal deposit. So we have a real big reservoir of works and data of all kinds. And we have also a very, let's say, encyclopedic vocation. We do not make any choice or aesthetic choices or moral choices around the collection we have. It's the legal deposit, so it's a real reservoir. So we have a really long-term relationship with researchers, so to speak. And of course, with the advent of the digital humanities, new research practices have emerged, as you know, of course, distance reading, mass analysis, computational analysis, and so on. And meanwhile, new collections have been added to the library collection. Firstly, through mass digitalization, you all know Gallica, I hope. And also through the inclusion of the legal deposit of native digital resources, such as, of course, the Internet archives that have been integrated to the legal deposit in 1996. So somehow the sources have changed, but not on an epistemological sense. It's quite difficult for me to speak in English, as you noticed. But so it has changed, but only on that shape and approach. And now these new sources require different methodology to be studied. But when we speak about digital, collection at the BNF, in fact, it's not something. It's then very large in various contents. In fact, it's not something. It's very various. You have, of course, the digitized document on Gallica, as you all know. Gallica, it's almost 9 million documents, and not only printed, it's also video, it's also sound, it's also pictures, engraving, and so on. We also have objects. And when we speak about printed documents, some are authorized, some are not, some are represented because we had a special politic on that particular document at one time, but so it's not always representative of what we have really inside the library. So you have to take this tool. Gallica, it's wonderful, but you have to take it very carefully. And of course, we have the tools developed around Gallica to search the collection, and they are not that easy to approach and to understand and manipulate. So even Gallica is not that easy to understand. I'm going to go very quickly because we also have, when we speak about digital collection, we also speak about what we produce ourselves as librarians. That means the metadata. And we have 15 million of bibliological records at the BNF and 5 million authority records. So it's very huge also, and you have to understand the format if you want to work with it. Hard copies, CD, DVD, video games, born digital documents such as Internet Archive, and those sources are very, very difficult to deal with because they are, of course, massive, but they're also, they have some very typical format, and their archives are not like the living web. So you really need an expert to work with these resources. So as we can see, those particular sources, like other sources, of course, have their richness, complexity, but remain very difficult to deal with. And in many cases, it requires an expertise and support at several levels. Like, of course, to navigate into the collection, so you need the librarians. You also need sometimes technical support to build the queries, to use the API, I would say. And also technical support to perform this mass processing. But somehow, the mission remains the same for the BNF. We have to welcome the searcher and to help them to navigate into this mass of collection. And that's also true in the for the researchers, of course, because various profiles of engineers and data scientists have joined the rank of the research team, and that's the same for the librarians. I mean, we remind librarians, but we also need some technical support sometimes to understand our collection and to help the researcher to go through it. But of course, what has not changed is a kind of form of methodology, because to understand these sources, their histories, their constitutions, their mode of conservation, their consultation rules or procedure, it is necessary to rely on those who have constituted and categorized those collections, that means the librarians. And it is all the more true when we talk about digital collections. So here is the dream team for a DH project. Because, like, I mean, it's a bit funny, but in somehow, like, we have, of course, a lot of exchange with searchers at the BNF, and they all say that they really need a space to talk with the expert of the BNF. So it's always very nice for us to hear that, but that's true that most of the time when we work on DH, we work on massive of documents, and most of the time it's you can only have a probabilistic approach to this massive, and you need to categorize the content and to make some deep semantic processing. It's only possible once you have categorized and have solid conceptual categories. Librarians have been working on this topic for a long time, and they know the collection, and they are almost the only one able to categorize and co-construct approach with the researcher. So for a research project in DH to be successful, I think you need a combination of 3 professional culture and skills. So that, of course, the researcher who defines the topic question, the librarian who helps the researcher to refine and build the corpora, and the engineer who applies and invent digital tools or to understand and interpret the corpora. So I had some few examples of projects we welcomed or we are ongoing, like they are still welcoming at the BNF, and we have three types somehow. The first one that we call the Gargantua way is when researcher needs a lot, like a huge amount of data, like no matter the quality of the topics, it's more like to train some models or to like, yeah, the Upville project. It was like, at first they came to us and they asked a dump of Gallica. It was like 5 million documents at that time because they needed to work on the French literacy. And at the end, they had like 145,000 monograph delivered. Europeana newspaper project. It was also a big project, and it's what is particular in this kind of project is that it's not, the difficulties is not on the side of the pipeline. It's also to define the corpus with the searchers to understand how they will deal with the format and how they can host it in their institution to another type of project, which is also kind of a challenge, what we call the Archibald way. It's when the searchers, it's a kind of like subject research. For instance, we have this program that we are welcoming now, Gallica Env project, and they're working on the notion of environment, but on a long-term history. So the beginning of the 16th century to now. So of course, environment doesn't exist in the 16th century. It's another conceptual way to approach the term. So it's huge because it's on all different kind of documents at the BNF. It's like maps, it's journals, it's traveling, récit de voyage. Sorry for my English, but whatever. It's like it's on manuscript, but it's also printed. It's like it's huge and it's everywhere, and it required a lot of expertise of the people who knows the collection. And the Cook way, it's more like exploring new territories. Like, and for instance, we have a lot of proposal to work on internet archives, which are very difficult to deal with, as I said, because it's huge, it's massive, it's not, you can't have cataloging on these resources. It's not possible, it's too massive. So we keep it for the future. And one day, maybe we will have tools that allow us to make some feed the text to our whatever to work on this particular support. And we're really happy to welcome the searchers who are working on this kind of resources, because we need to build some tools and we need to build the tools with them. It comes from their need. We help them to understand the resources, and we try to find some engineers that want to work on the topic. So this kind of projects that we welcome, it's like almost 10 years now that we have this kind of a proposal or this kind of project coming to us. So we are able now to have a kind of map of needs, to understand the need, and we identify three kinds. Like most of the time, the users or the researchers don't know our tools. They of course they know the general catalog and they know Gallica, but they don't know how to work with it, because it's complicated and because it requires trainings and support. So that's one of the first needs. They need to understand the information structuring, like how to access to metadata, the metadata format, the indexing languages also. And they need help to with the data extraction to understand the IP, the API, and the Sparkle request, that the kind of tools we build to search the catalog. They also need granted residency, because when researchers are working on copyrighted resources, they cannot work outside the BNF, they need to be inside the BNF. And they also need documentation, and most of the time sets of annotated data, such as ground truth, for instance, when they work on HDR. And we have this kind of resources, so that's one of the needs we identify. And what we noticed also is that all these projects require a real coordination between different departments inside the BNF. Like the BNF, it's a very huge institution. It's like 2,000 people working there, and they are all specialized in one field. And what is kind of difficult in this institution is to coordinate all this expertise. So we really needed an identified service that coordinates all this expertise and skills. Yeah, and I'm going to go a bit quickly because, but of course, in the BNF, I mean, we are a library, an heritage library, research library, but we are not an agency research. And, that's the CNRS in France that take care of those topics. So at the BNF, we deliver the corpora, let's say, but what comes next, that's not our problem. That's the Huma-Num one. So that's why we needed a partnership with other institutions to have a complete cycle around the lifetime of the project. So we're here to help the researcher to build this corpora, to deliver the corpora, to work on this corpora inside the BNF or not. But then the database or the website, that's not our problem, that's Huma-Num. So we needed this partnership to accomplish the cycle. And also on the other side, Huma-Num, such as Nicolas presented, or the other Nicolas will present tomorrow, it's also a community of researchers, and we need this, how can I say that, this coordination on the research work to complete the circle, let's say. So now, the Bnf Data Lab. So as I said, we needed to identify the expert inside the BNF to coordinate like all this kind of expertise to offer a real service. And that's the purpose of the Bnf Data Lab. The Bnf Data Lab, it's brand new. It has been inaugurated in October 21. And it's both a space, because we need to welcome the researchers inside the premises of the BNF. And it's also a range of services that has been designed to respond to all the difficulties that I exposed to you. And it's also very important for us as an institution to have this coordination, because of course we have to quickly identify the expert, as I said, ensure also greater visibility of the digital collections and the opportunities they offer. We need to support researchers as the research, as it is practiced today. And the research as it is practiced, 5 minutes, my God. Okay, I go quick. I just show you the different services we built, and we have like 4 families of services. Like the one is to welcome the researcher, so that it can find its way through the BNF and the collections. And we also have a kind of analysis of the need. And then when it seems to us that the data lab can welcome the researcher, we have a kind of like a family services that help to build the corpora. That goes also with trainings and different support. The third one is to work on the corpora so that you can have residency in the BNF. You can have access to the dedicated IT infrastructure we built. If you have questions about it, I can answer on it later. So here you have some nice searchers that are working in the data lab, so in the group rooms and on the manifestation room, let's say, and we have also individuals. Yeah, I don't have the authorization of the lady in here, so the dedicated infrastructure and the trainings. I would really go quickly on the just a word on this particular picture, because we really think that we have to build a community inside the BNF. And we think that to build this community of engineers and researchers and librarians, we have to, in French, I would say force the destiny, but in English, I don't know, but we have to propose some scientific events so that the people come to us and we have this real interaction. So we worked on a typology of event that goes from trainings to seminar and symposiums. And we had a few this year that were all very crowded and quite successful, I would say. That will help us also to build the data lab as an in-house laboratory. Because, of course, we are welcoming the researchers to produce knowledge, of course, but also to build some new tools for us. The data lab is a kind of experimental place where researchers can experiment and work on tools. And if it's something that, how can I say that, interest the BNF, sorry, I'm not very clear. Maybe I will just read my text because I try to go quick, but I'm losing myself. So the BNF Data Lab can be seen as a bridge for developing BNF structured tools. Of course, we are not pretending to become a host for all the tools developed by the researchers, but we bet that in the same cases, we will be able to take over the tools on our own account by moving into an industrial stage. The Bnf Data Lab welcomes project at experimental stage, of course, but if a technology is mature enough, we change scale and then we let it to the internal IT department that takes over to document the tools, maintain it, and offer it to the public. And that's also, we have a good, I will let the speak to my colleague Emmanuel that will present the new EA project that illustrate a bit what I've been talking about around the in-house laboratory.
Yes, can you hear me, Mary?
Yes, we can.
Je t'entends pas très bien, pardon.
Est-ce que tu m'entends là?
Oui, très bien, pardon.
Ok. Je peux pas allumer ma vidéo, c'est l'autre qui l'a coupée, donc je pense qu'il faut qu'il me la rallume ou qu'il me demande de la rallumer. So, I don't have the possibility to display my video.
Est-ce qu'on peut rallumer la vidéo d'Emmanuel Bermès?
Ok.
Et est-ce que j'arrête de partager pour que tu puisses mettre le...
Non, t'as qu'à laisser comme ça.
Je laisse comme ça.
I'm going to be very quick because I understand that we are running out of time, but if you do have any questions on this part of the presentation, we can answer them. So I just wanted to mention very quickly that speaking of artificial intelligence, we've been working on the roadmap with the aim to industrialize the kind of research that is done within the data lab, the kind of research that Marie has presented. And some of this research really has an interest for the purpose of making our digital collections more accessible. So it can be HDR, it can be computer vision or image mining. It can be metadata enrichment or generation of content based on raw data. And things like that can be experimented as research projects within the data lab. But at some point, if we want them to benefit the rest of our users, we need to industrialize them. So research is a very good way to experiment with the technology and build on the skills that exist in the academic field. But when it comes to industrialize, often we have to redevelop the code that was created in a research project. So it's a whole new story, even if it's the same functionality for the digital library, it's starting something new. So this is what the AI roadmap is about. I'm just putting now in the chat a link where you on our website where you can find this roadmap in a synthetic form, a summary of it, and it's both in English and in French. So you can find it also easily if you do a search in Google. And so the purpose is to have a 5-year plan to industrialize part of the AI technology that we've been experimenting in research projects. So this 5-year plan includes a strategy with some reflection on ethics, like the impact of AI on the environment, on how to accompany, how to help the change. And also how to develop new skills. What do we need in terms of infrastructure, in terms of data governance, and in terms of funding? So we've been trying to pull this together. What you have on the screen is a diagram that represents the main topics that we want to investigate in the 4 to 5 coming years. So you can see on the top computer vision, image mining in Gallica, our digital library. Then there are things on metadata, things related to HDR, personalized recommendation with an ethical approach, things that are related to finding documents within web archives, and finally, using AI to make policy decisions on preservation of physical collections. So these are just a few examples of what we can do with AI in a library. It's very promising, but it's really at a starting point and at an experimental stage. So industrialization is a big question for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have time for questions. Perhaps I can start with one. So listening what you presented, we anticipate that there is a lot of coordination to do between different projects, between different institutions involved in what you do, and how do you organize that? Is it well, costly in terms of time, and because the Bnf lab is also a partnership with Huma-Num and CNRS. So well, how did you manage to find a satisfactory way to avoid any too much time consumption on that?
Okay, you want to answer, Emmanuel, or I jump?
You can start with your department, maybe.
Well, so I'm I'm the coordinator, like inside the BNF, first of all, like we had to coordinate inside this institution, which is big and like there's a lot of experts, different experts. So there is one coordinator, which is me. I'm inside the department, which is in charge of the trainings and the trainings around bibliographic research. And then we have a colleague from Huma-Num, which is going to work with us. And also inside the BNF, we have this network of 40 correspondents that are linked to the different departments. So when we need someone in the metadata, I join the correspondent, which is in charge of showing me the good expert that can help us to. So that's inside the BNF, and then we have to build another network outside the BNF. So we started with Huma-Num, which is also a national structure. Such is the BNF. It's a national library, and we have this national infrastructure. And like for now, I would say we're still not working on two foot. Let's say it's we are. Help me, Emmanuel. My English is too bad.
It's work in progress, and I think what you mean is that we are learning by doing, which we already have started with some projects, and it's been a few years now, because before the data lab, which opened in 21, we had the Corpus project, which I was leading, and we already had some projects that worked with us on defining the services that researchers need to carry their work. So yes, that's a lot of coordination, but the reason why we created this structure within the BNF is that if we want to scale, so if we want to have more and more projects with that kind of needs at the BNF, we really needed to have some process, to have a good organization. So what Marie described, the work with Huma-Num and the work that she's doing in her department, to have 2 people taking care of each project, and then the network of people in other departments that bring different expertise on different topics. All this is contributing to being able to scale and to have more and more projects.
Thank you. More questions? Goran?
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'd have an Archimboldo question, if I can. So, and I was thinking it's actually aimed at how to create a place of scientific conversation in case where people are not personally present at the BNF, and in Archimboldo case, we're not working on specific topically very well delimited corpora. If there is a possibility for the BNF to offer sort of information about other projects that are working on particular documents in a way that would be easily accessible for users around the world, because Gallica and all the other, digitized documents you have can be accessed from everywhere, which could, I guess, I believe, help other researchers around.
That's one of our main challenge at the time, because we have this place and we want the researchers to come in and to participate to the event the event. But not that easy, so we try to sometimes interact between the teams, because if we hear about a team which is working on, there was this program which called Body Capital, they were working on Internet Archive around health and so on, and we had this other team which were working also on Internet Archive, on health, but on COVID, and then we try to make the link when people are not inside the building, it's quite difficult, but we try to make this link. We also have this project of building a kind of a toolbox. So that's more for methodology and tools and what is developed around the project that we could host somewhere. And so a bit like what Nicola presented with the Jupyter notebooks. So in our case, that's not Jupyter notebooks. It's still a working process, like. But we really would like to take advantage of what is done inside the Bnf Data Lab so that others can use it. But it's still a work in progress. Like we for instance, we had like 5 projects this year that we welcomed as a resident, let's say. And some were really present, like some were very, because they needed the space because they were working on Internet Archive, so it's copyrighted, so they have to come. And really needed the expertise of the librarians because it's, well, they're not technicians, they don't know the work format, so it was really a real interaction and co-construction of the project. But on others, they're really, I mean, they knew the corpora. It was a closed corpora, let's say, because they were working on journals, so they really just needed this corpora. And then they were very good technicians also, so we never saw them. and I mean, of course, they're also welcome in the data lab. We really need this kind of profile also, but we have to invent some events or something to make them come and participate to the life of the data lab and to interfere with peers also. But we still have to invent some, Emmanuel?
Maybe if I can add something, I think if we want to go international, we probably will have the language barrier, which will be quite strong because most of the things we are doing are in French. But since the pandemic, we've started doing webinars. So there are some events in French that are available online. And also we have a website that is called api.bnf.fr. So it's a website where you can find all the documentation about the data sets and the API to access the raw data of Gallica and the other digital collections. So there's a lot of documentation there, either made by ourselves or made by research projects that have worked with the data sets from the BNF and that were ready to share what they had done on this website. But of course, yes, most of it is in French.